Hey everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Planet Coaster College 2. Today I have just a short tutorial for you on how to very easily make smooth custom loops. Now this technique was invented by Dustin, so credit goes to him, and this method can save you a lot of time when making custom loops, or if you're just dipping your toes into custom loops for the first time, it's very easy to make them now. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so what you want to do is you first want to create the shape of your loop, and I'm going to create the shape of a B&M floorless loop, which tends to be a very teardrop style loop. So I'm going to make this quite wide at the bottom, and then as I go to the top I'm going to make my pieces shorter and shorter, just to make sure that it's very tight at the top, and down at the bottom we have this very long runoff. So I'm going to go to about 6 meters for these, 5 meters for these, and then back up to some higher numbers. And I don't have to worry about moving from side to side. We'll fix that at a later stage. For now, we are just going to intersect our previous part of the track, and that is completely fine. Just make sure that the shape is up to what you want. So in my case right here, I'm really trying to go for that B&M teardrop style loop, but some other companies might have slightly different shapes. So this is the start, and now you want to build a long straight section of track. It doesn't really matter how long this is, just make it at least as long as the loop itself is. Then we go into edit mode and we select that straight section of track and the loop as well, and check where the middle is. These icons indicate the middle, and try to get that middle as close to the end of the loop as possible. So I think right about here is probably good. We can move that a little bit there, but that's just a tad in the loop. So we're going to keep it there. Then we're going to press and hold Control and grab this side to side move thing. And we can switch the whole loop to the side here, whichever side we want really. And just make sure that it's enough clearance so that the cars don't bump into each other or people's hands don't bump into the track. This seems like just about right. And there you have it. That's the basis of our loop. Now all that we still need to do is select the loop and try to get it as smooth as we want it to be. And to do that, I'm just going to grab it and press smooth a few times. And that should be good enough. And that's also as far as I could take it there. And our loop is finished. Just like that. Now let's take a look at how this loop rides. So as we go down, we can see we have a smooth hill going here, and then this hill transitions pretty flush into this loop, which we slowly and smoothly crest. And you don't really notice the transitions between different pieces, and it's just shocking to me how easy it is to make a smooth loop now. Let's also take a quick look at the G-forces to see how it realistically rides. So as you go down and into the loop, we have around 3 Gs, which is about realistic, and then at the top we are hovering around 0 Gs, so you get a little bit of hang time. I normally recommend not going above 3.5 Gs for too long on elements like this, and trying to keep the forces as steady and consistent as well. So here you can see we're going from a long stretch of sustained 3 Gs to slowly moving up to 0 Gs at the top here, and then slowly back up again as we go down. Now you might also be wondering, why bother with these custom loops when there's a vertical loop in the game as well? It's of course all pretty subjective, but personally I prefer the shape of being able to do your own loop. I think the in-game loops are okay, but a bit on the chunky side, which you can see if you compare it to this very slender custom loop here. And also, if you make them larger, they tend to move to the side a lot. So there's a very big difference in width in this loop compared to the custom one. So there's that. And also, I think there's fun in making custom loop shapes. For instance, you might want your loop to be a bit more circular. You can play a bit with the shaping and the G-forces if you do them custom. Now what makes this easy loop technique possible is a change that Frontiers made in the way that segment dragging works. So in Planet Coaster 1 there was only one way to drag segments, but there are now 3 different ways in which you can select a section and then drag it around. The first is without pressing any keys, and I'm gonna pause the game not to let the coaster crash. basically what happens is that the editor takes this middle node and moves that around relative to the arrow that you're taking. And every other node just kind of goes along with that. And what you can also do, which is what we've done for the loop, is hold Control and then drag it. Then what happens is that the nodes can only move in the direction that you're moving your central node like this. So on a curve, it does this basically. It doesn't create the weird outward curved sections that happen when you don't press Control. And finally, you can also hold Shift, and what happens then is that it grabs the entire selection of nodes that you have and it changes the shape of that without worrying too much about how it connects to the rest of your tracks. As you can see, we have a perfect semicircle, and no matter how I scale it up or down, it's going to remain a semicircle, and it's just going to have some weird connections to the rest of the track. So that's basically how these three different ways of dragging work. And you can combine these in different coaster elements to have much more fine control over the way that you smooth and shape different elements. To give you an example, let's make an airtime hill real quick. So for my airtime hill, I'm going to follow a similar technique as the loop. I'm just going to have my angle snap on, and I'm going to add some longer sections first, and then as we go up the hill, it's going to be steeper and smaller pieces. So we go to an 8 length piece, and we're going to make it very tight at the top, and then as we go down, less and less tight, one straight piece, and finally we go back again. I wouldn't always recommend doing coasters like this, but I do find it pretty easy if I want to get a specific consistent shape. Now, this is not the best shaped airtime hill, but thankfully we can fix it with some of the techniques that we have now. So first and foremost, I'm going to smooth this whole thing to make the segments a little easier to work with. And then I'm just going to hold Control and move it down. As you can see, we can make the parabola a little bit tighter. If we move it up a bit, for instance, it gets a very weird round shape, but we can change the shaping a bit like this. And then we might move it down a bit more like this to maintain the shape while moving it up and down. And this is without pressing any buttons. And finally, Shift, in this case, is not really useful because it just ends up creating really weird track pieces at the end and at the start. But the Control holding technique and the no button at all technique combined allow you to change the height and shaping of hills like this. So let's make it a little bit taller, like that. Smooth it a bit more and see how it looks. And again, I'm keeping my eye on the G-forces, making sure that it's sustained and floaty all the way across the top. And as you can see, it was a little bit below zero and a little bit above zero here and here, but because the G-forces are tracking the front car, that actually makes sense. And we've got about as perfect of a 0G airtime hill going here as you can get within a minute. So pretty happy with that. So just have fun experimenting with these tools, I'd say. I think they're some of the most underrated and underappreciated parts that have changed about the Coaster Builder, but they're really huge if it comes to trying to fine-tune elements and working on your G-forces and smoothness and all that good stuff. So I hope this tutorial has helped you a little bit in your coaster building endeavors, and I hope to see you in the next episode of Planet Coaster College. Take care, everyone.